Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, Bryan Smith and I sit down with Dr. Daphne Ryan, or Doc, as she is known as in naval aviation. Dr. Ryan's a board-certified specialist in orthopedic physical therapy and an aviation specialist physical therapist. She has over 2 decades of experience and over 42,000 direct care patient hours. Dr. Ryan spent the last 7 years working directly with aviators to mitigate their spinal pain. Dr. Ryan's used her passion and experience to keep pilots and aircrew in the aircraft. Owner of Smart BacX Labs in Denver, Dr. Ryan's developed treatments for the military, law enforcement, and commercial pilots, including aircrew, to find solutions to help mitigate their neck and back pain. Stand by for a message at the end of the episode if you are or may be in a position requiring spinal surgery. Thank you to our sponsors, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, Shotover, and Airbus.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Down by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Hey, welcome to Hangar Z podcast. I'm your host, John Gray. Man, today's conversation is something that's near and dear to my heart and near and dear to Bryan Smith's heart, who's our co-host for today. How you doing, Bryan?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
Really good. Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. I've actually been looking to have someone like our guest on the podcast for quite a long time for personal and selfish reasons, but I think the knowledge that she's going to impart on everybody in the industry is pretty important. Talking about the health that goes into spinal care. Everyone knows that flies in public safety aviation, in particular law enforcement aviation, we do a lot of left-hand or right-hand turns. I think we spend 95% of our time in an orbit. It doesn't matter if you're in the TFO seat or the pilot seat, you spend a lot of time in a fixed position, and it has a total impact on your body. So with us today to talk about some of the mitigations that we can put in place and some of the treatments that are maybe available if you're already suffering from some of those problems is Dr. Ryan. How you doing, ma'am?
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, very good. I call you Dr. Ryan, but those that get treatment from you, they call you Dr. Daphne Ryan?
They call me Doc.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. Well, in advance, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for the industry, all the efforts that you've dedicated to making folks feel better and preventing invasive surgeries and things that potentially make it worse down the road. So thank you for all that. You've got a really interesting background. You've done a lot of really interesting things. We'll get into that for sure. A lot of the focus that you've put into this area so far has been in naval aviation. Is that correct?
Yes, naval and marine aviation. And then recently the U.S. Coast Guard at Hitron in Jacksonville. Reading
through your posts on LinkedIn, just about every time I read one of your posts, I'm like, oh my gosh, it speaks directly to me and to Bryan and anybody with neck pain, which I would assume is most of our industry, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Again, thank you for that. Hangar Z tradition is to start with drink of the day. And I'm excited for today's drink of the day because Bryan Smith always has an interesting flair when it comes to drink of the day. And I'll let him elaborate on that. But for me, it's still early. It's 11 o'clock in California. Just rolling with the Black Rifle coffee in my Hangar Z Yeti. It is Friday, so later drinks of the day will include some more spicy beverages, but that's what I've got for now. Dr. Ryan, what is your drink of the day? Or what would be your drink of the day if it was 5 o'clock?
Yeah, it would probably be 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, I'm sticking with the ice water after working with patients.
Okay.
Yeah, in the morning it's going to be Costco dark roast coffee with a little Chobani vanilla creamer.
Okay. Bryan, I'm very anxious here.
I try to keep it as exciting as tea can be for you, John. And I am. I did break open my last bag of Taiwanese high mountain tea, which is my specialty that I brought out just for my special time with you, John, before I go back, because I can't buy it here. But I thought, you know what? This isn't exciting enough. So I also, in preparation for the podcast, scheduled a surgery this week and had it done so I could mix my tea with prescription pain medication. So if I say anything stupid, it might be the combination of green tea and oxycodone that I've got going for my drink of the day.
Always a winner. Always a winner.
Yeah. Top that, next guest host.
So Brian's high as a Georgia pine as we record this interview.
Yeah.
Which
And
very
another
happy
thing.
That's great. For those that have heard the previous episodes with Bryan on, he's always got tea. That's his standard drink of the day. And I think was it Reno at AppsCon? I was able to track down some very special tea for you for our drink of the day at that event. So I knew it was going to be something along those lines. But to get your specialty private stash out, we're honored.
Private last bag, man, just for you.
Well, thank you, sir. The next segment is the hot seat. So it's just kind of an opportunity for some random questions and just to break the ice a little bit. And these 3 questions I'm going to ask are, I think, questions that give me a lot of insight in the person we're talking to. They're fairly simple questions. So the first question is along the lines of being young. When you're young, a lot of times you get a job, and the purpose for that job is to pay for the car that you have or want to have. So when you look back to the first job you ever had, what was the first job you had, and was that job, was the goal for that job to pay for a car?
My first job was at a Italian bakery in upstate New York. And it had these pink boxes that we would fill with cookies. And we had to tie the string off. And to this day, I can feel the callus on my index finger from having to tear the string. And I have a visceral reaction when I'm camping of having, there we are again, Italian bakery. And it was just to have more freedom, to stop having to go up against the parents and asking for money. But I thought it was a car, but I eventually got one as a cheap beater for the birthday. So I didn't have to spend the money on that.
Okay. Yeah. Those first jobs are always fun when you think back to what it was you did and what you learned from it. My mom owned a coffee house and bakery growing up. So I, like you, spent a lot of time in a bakery. I felt like it was fun. Like I think because of the coffee house element of it seemed like a bar, except the people, your patrons weren't angry. They're happy generally because they're,
That's
I like that industry. I thought it was really fun. And Bryan, what was your first job?
You don't have any pending sponsorships from Kentucky Fried Chicken, do you? Because you're about to lose it if you do.
That was your first job?
Yeah, it was KFC. Just because it was by the house and I didn't have a car and I could walk up there as a teenager. And there was a car I wanted, but I didn't have any false hopes of my KFC job providing me with the means to get that car. I knew I had to have a job, and everything for me in high school was to check boxes off a checklist to get into the college career I wanted. And I knew that was something I had to check. So it was walking distance, and it was a job. I didn't enjoy it. I think a bakery and coffee shop would have been much better.
Did you get the secret recipe for the chicken?
I did get some insights on how the chicken is made, which I don't believe are the Colonel's original intentions. And I still have trouble to this day going to KFC. So
okay, well.
This is kind of funny. I lived in the town where the Colonel started in his own house. Yeah, it's London, Kentucky. He has a 5-inch plated glass window because he was actually a colonel. And you can still go and see his stove. And apparently it was made in his kitchen. Just kept adding spices. Yeah, it's a real thing.
And I'll admit, when I was younger, I absolutely loved KFC.
Me too.
Now I don't eat it, but man, it was so good. So
yeah,
it's a big thing. When I lived in Asia, it's a huge thing. And if for some reason, like McDonald's and KFC in China and Taiwan are the two big fast food chains. and not inexpensive at all. So when my wife's family started coming here, and KFC used to have like the all-you-can-eat buffet, it was like us going to like an all-you-can-eat lobster buffet or something. They're like, oh my God, it's all-you-can-eat KFC. And it was so great. I was like taking them out to like a 5-star dinner, and it just cost me what the buffet at KFC was. I was a hero, and it's all since worn off, and everybody's caught on now. But for a while there, it was a cheap way to be a hero to the family.
Well, Brian, you're right. I just got back from Japan, and some Navy friends said it was over Valentine's Day, and some Navy friends said it's like a romance holiday for the Japanese, and they splurge and go to KFC.
Yeah.
So it's the thing. It's the thing. Yeah.
In the US, it's so great. They often combine it with another Taco Bell and a gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So does it taste the same overseas as it does here in the US?
I didn't have it.
It's been a long time since I was there, but I do remember it being the same. And there was a lot, like 20 years ago, there was Subway in mainland China, which I thought was a weird one to be there. And I remember reading that the majority of the ingredients were imported because they wanted to keep the taste the same, but they would always have local dishes, like local versions of things that you could only get there, but you could still get like some core things that they attempted to make taste the same as everywhere else.
Well, move on to the second question, which kind of relates to the first question. So the next question is, when you talk about your first car, you said it was a beater. What was your first car?
I think it was a Nissan something. It was just a little sedan, blue. It got me. I would clean it with Q-tips down in the gear shift. Like, oh, it's going to make it a much better car to just have it. I was so glad to have it. Yeah.
But you bring up gear shifts, and like that's something that my kids will never know. Manual transmissions are so hard to find these days. Like,
it's true.
It's driving a stick, a manual transmission is an art that is kind of disappearing in the US, unfortunately, So Brian, for you, what was your first car, and was it a automatic or a manual?
It was automatic. It was a Chevy Celebrity. It was a hand-me-down.
Nice.
I mean, it was a Minnesota car, so it was beat up and rusted, but it was a car, and that's all you needed when you were a teenager.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a place from point A to point B. But you do spend so much of your time trying to earn money to upgrade your car, and the upgrades obviously are silly at that age. To be, the fuzzy dice hanging from the rearview mirror is an upgrade.
Well, we'd upgrade it. That was back in the time when subwoofers and everything started getting real big. So we put this huge stereo system, completely purchased at Radio Shack, in the back of this old beater Chevy Celebrity, and it was wired everywhere. How that car didn't start on fire, I have no idea. And it was an obnoxious loud. We play heavy metal music really loud, and now when I see people driving around cars playing music really loud, and now I'm old, I'm like, turn down that music. But I have to remember, yes. Oh, that's right. Yes. I was that guy.
Wow.
Now you're yelling at kids to slow down, turn the music down.
Yeah. You hurt my ears. Leave me alone. Yeah.
Well, going from the first car, which most times, it's a beater, to either the favorite car you've ever had or the car you currently have, what would you say that is, Dr. Ryan?
Ooh, I have I like driving in the mountains well. I hate chugging up to the ski mountain. So I have a Volkswagen Tiguan, and you would be surprised what the little Volkswagen engine can do on a hill. So yeah, that's pretty basic, but I love it. I had a RAV4 for a while, and it didn't like the hills.
No.
So at least the way I drive them.
All right. Note to self. Don't drive right. Dr. Ryan.
Wait a minute, John, what was your first car? I feel like you're avoiding the question.
No, I'll be honest. I was completely spoiled. I got a newish Jeep Wrangler.
What?
Nice.
Oh,
nice. You use your Jeep Wrangler to drive to the coffee shop. I see how it is. We had.
What's funny though is look at after college, I bought a brand new car out of college, which was a mistake because it was so expensive. That's the only new car I've ever purchased. And I've gone backwards from there in time. So I started out with a 2003 Acura RSX. And then I went to a 2001 Acura CL. And then I went to a 1998 Honda Accord. So
Nice.
things, didn't get better. They got worse until recently. And then we got rid of all those cars. And we're down to 2 cars now. So just driving a Ford Explorer, so it's all good. Bryan, what are you driving now, or what's your favorite car you ever had?
Well, 2 different things. What we're driving now, we had a minivan for years because he had kids and you just had to, and it wasn't cool, but they work well. And then when it came time, that thing was dying. My wife was like, we can't do another minivan. So we got a Honda Pilot because we went, well, what can give us basically a minivan size with the kids and everything, but not look like a minivan. And the Honda Pilot been pretty good, but about as boring. But I grew up, aviation was everything. Every movie I watched, every TV show I watched, every book, it had to be aviation. And every aviation movie, like the Wright stuff and everything, they all drove Corvettes. And it was all, like late 60s, early 70s Corvettes. So that was all I wanted, was a Corvette. And I have one in the garage. It hasn't run in 10 years because I'm not good at prioritizing what's important in life. And I spend too much time working and not putting the car back together. But that's all I ever wanted. If I got a brand new car, I'd sell it and put the money into it, just because that was a pilot's car to me. And it just has that pilot aura about it.
You're making a lot of sense to me, because every naval base I've ever been to, all of a sudden it's like the Corvettes come out of the ground compared to where I live, and every shade, every color, old ones, new ones. And I never knew that it had that kind of a relationship with aviation. So now that helps.
Yeah, makes sense. That's definitely my youngest son's. That's his dream car. He sees the different Corvettes go by, and he'll tell me what kind of Corvette it is, what age range it is. Like he loves them. So yeah, it's. I think if I could pick any car, like a muscle car type thing, generally I actually have a hard time with this because I don't love supercars. I like off-road type like the Jeep type vehicles, the Land Rover Defender 90s, those things were awesome. The Ford Raptors, those are awesome. But when it comes to like a sports car, I do have to say the Corvette it's a awesome looking car,
Yeah, it does look nice.
if you could pick any car to drive fast in mountains, what would you pick?
I do. I've been looking at the Defender too. That looks like that would be fun to drive, but fast. Something that hugs the corners. Yeah, probably a Corvette if you really push me on it. Just something that corners well, something that, responsive.
Yeah. Those mid-engine Corvettes are hard to beat, So
yeah, you're probably right, Bryan. I don't know.
That's the hot seat. Again, just an opportunity to break the ice and kind of get some insight as to who you are and some of the randomness that comes from that. Before we get into, where you're raised and kind of how you got to where you are, can you give us a preview, like what you're doing now and just a kind of a synopsis of that?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
After 7 years, I'm kind of in some transitions right now, which is nice. I'm in Denver, branching out into commercial air and other aviation environments that are not Navy, strictly Navy, but that's where my heart is. My heart's with the Navy. So I'm still working with them. I started Smart BacX Labs, and that is a way to teach and train anyone how to mitigate what life throws at their neck and back and self-manage, keep medical costs down, prevent invasive surgeries, and give them tools that have been vetted for 4 or 5 decades now in my world. So bringing that gold standard care to anyone around the world. I trained someone in Sweden the other day. And so that was nice. And then had someone on an East Coast and a West Coast within a few hours, and during COVID, I was actually able to help one of our pilots in Japan virtually. And I tell you, anyone who flies gets the principles of the neck and back so well that it took 1 or 2 sessions, and he was able to self-manage, and he got better with a virtual session. So I'm also going to be doing some I think we've done the workshops with commands enough now that they're normalized, and we're getting a better demand signal for that, and getting connected with some other special forces groups, helping them as well, working on supporting veterans with their concerns, as well as interpreting some of their VA claims and that kind of stuff. But yeah, there are a lot of exciting things going on. And the big one is working on a model of what the neck and back and spine and all of its tissues go through with the flying in different positions, to say, you don't have to prove that you're hurt, because pain is hard to put on imaging. And that's our problem. And the model has tested all of the tensile forces of the body and the spine, and they are able to put those together and then say, if you were at this acceleration, these angles, this is what that probably went through, 99% certainty. And that's something I hope we finish soon, because I think a lot of veterans could really use that to validate their experience.
Yeah, we talk about the cumulative effect of flying and flying in circles, and what you're describing. It's something that when I was young, I had never even considered. When I went to aviation, that was not something I thought was a risk to my health.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the fact that this is coming out and you're putting the effort and time and money into the research to help educate folks, and hopefully, like you said, mitigate some of these injuries that occur over the course of a career from happening in the first place, I think is huge.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, me too.
Our goal in having this conversation is to help folks identify that this can be a problem, and if it is a problem, how to help treat that, and like you said, potentially hopefully avert an invasive surgery that potentially ends your career. And that's not how I envisioned my career ending, but it's what happened. And if it can help, if this conversation can help 1 or 2 folks avert that, I would be beyond happy.
Exactly.
I think what the listeners need to just accept, especially the listeners who are flying right now, is if they continue to fly in public safety aviation, at some point, they're going to have a challenge with the neck and back. It's just inevitable. And it sounds very negative, but it's just inevitable. And because we all know, if you've been in this long enough, we have friends and acquaintances that we know that have ended their career or continue their career under serious pain. Everybody has a friend or an acquaintance like that, probably multiple people if you've been doing this for a while. And so if you just start out accepting this is going to be a challenge, this is a price that's going to be paid if you accept doing this career, then we can get past that denial stage and start listening to, some ideas of how we can mitigate that, hopefully for, the newer folks, so they don't get to the point that you and I are at. And then for folks like us on how we can deal with it and continue on. But I think everybody listening, if you're spending time in an aircraft doing this kind of work, right now you just need to accept the fact that this is going to be a challenge for you at some point, if it's not already, and listen to what the doctor has to say on what we can do about it.
And Bryan, through your experience as the APSA public safety, or not public safety, as the APSA safety manager, I know you've had a lot of conversations on physiology and some of the general conversations surrounding overall health, but is this a topic that you've seen come up repetitively over the course of your time?
Yeah, it's constant. It's out there. Everybody talks about they always want to bring up the night vision goggles, which I'm sure we'll talk about later, and they certainly aggravate it, but I don't think it's a necessary ingredient for having neck and back problems. There are plenty of people
Agreed.
that have it without that, but we talk about it all the time. And oh, my neck hurts, oh, my back hurts, oh, so and so had to quit because of it, oh, this and that, oh, it's going to cause me this. But the conversation never goes into, okay, what are we going to do about it? It just reverts back to this machismo. Well, that sucks, and that's just the badge of honor that I'll have to wear one day for doing the job. And I was that way. I thought, oh, that's for old, weak people, and now I'm like, oh shit, I'm old and weak now, and my neck hurts. I should have done something. But it's I think it's so slow and cumulative. It's easy to ignore until you get to a point where you can't ignore it anymore.
That's right.
And we spend too much time trying to be tough, or just trying to do this, this negative, oh, that's just going to happen. That's just the price. And I think the first step is just, okay, this is going to be a challenge, and there's something we can do about it now. So start out with that, and we can go from there. But it's everywhere,
Bryan, I think you nailed it, because most of the pilots I've ever worked with would like to have something that would help. No one's bringing it to them, or they don't know what it is, or what they've been given hasn't helped, if not harmed, what they're trying to do. They get worse, or they hurt more, or it doesn't get better. So why bother? So then it goes into the suck it up phase. And then they just keep quiet because they don't want to down shit or get relieved from their position that they worked so hard to get. And then over here on the other side is some help that could help waiting for them. So when the two meet, it's very empowering. I've had so many pilots say they kept telling me it was in my head, and here you are, I feel better in one visit or one. And it's not a miracle cure. It's just spine interventions. And so it's just been really nice to see the relief that pilots not just have from the pain, but feel in their being of, I can maybe stay in the seat a little longer and not be broken and still enjoy my family.
You brought up something that I think is problematic in our career field when it comes to whether it's physical health or mental health. Pilots don't want to put themselves in a position where they're having to acknowledge a medical condition because it could potentially ground you. So you deal with whatever the problem is until you can't deal with it anymore. And I think if you do that, then you end up in a position like me, where now it's something that can't be treated. You've got to go into an invasive, surgery to fix the problem, and then it's even worse.
Yeah, it's just that leaky faucet that springs a leak, and now it's a bigger problem. And we can catch it upstream. I just have experienced people that want to help, but they don't know how to get the help to the pilots. And then I've seen in the Navy, for instance, almost a fear of, oh, that sounds bad, I need to down them. But that's not how the neck and back works. There's some strategies we can use. Give us 3 days, they're going to be fine. But it takes that translator who knows spine or who knows what the body will do to translate that to the pilot, and a medical person who that's not their specialty. Their specialty is to see if you're dying, Spine isn't the specialty of a flight surgeon. And my flight surgeons were always so grateful to brainstorm and help and think it through, and they love learning, and they're brilliant. And the ones I know are doing the very best they can, and they're all for something that keeps someone in the seat. So it's been a nice win-win. It's really been nice to make some changes and help people keep doing the job they love.
Well, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you for the contributions you've made to aviation, and
You're welcome.
Allowing folks to stay in the seat longer is huge. Getting back to you and kind of pre Dr. Ryan, You've talked about dedicating a majority of your career to the aviation industry. Was there an influence as a kid that kind of drew you to aviation?
I was drawn to just having a patriotism for my country and a value for my country through my dad. He was a cardiac thoracic surgeon in the Army. He was one of the surgeons that worked on the Beirut bombing victims in '83 when we were over in Landstuhl. And he said that they evac'd them. They were saluting him while they were bleeding out. And I remember being locked in the house because the base was on lockdown, everything was on alert. And so I grew up with knowing that can be a norm in our world, and not being shocked when there's a gun in an airport, because that's what you do when you need to protect people. And that and my mom, she was a physical therapist in the Army. She joined and went in to help kids that were underserved as a pediatric PT. I've gone and done medical missions. So that service, I've always been a service-oriented learner and curious, why are we doing that? Ask the question, why did we even think to do that? Where did that notion come from? Are we doing it for the right reasons? And is there a way to make sure that the help actually helps? And so I grew up with that environment. And then the aviation piece, I've been to over 50 countries. So I love getting on a plane and flying somewhere, and because it brings life and people and energy to me and me to them. So it's a way to have more life in my world. And then now to have gone through, worked with the Navy and Marine aviation, Air Force aviation, and now starting commercial aviation. And it's been a joy to see the skill set and the tactical capability and just what they can do with a jet and a helicopter is incredible. So, the Coast Guard said, "Doc, you have the controls, fly the aircraft." I just about lost it, and, but then he said, "Yeah, no, you flew it pretty well." And I thought, hey, and, so having something when I was younger, I would say was always a value system of service and, finding answers with, doing more with less, which is that matched with the Navy. I was been doing that my whole life, Q-tip and duct tape and build a shopping mall. And so I think where that has led to this point is wanting to use all of the parts that I've grown in me and all my education and all my passions and my joys and my learning experiences. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, in his book, he says, you have to fail in order to grow muscle. That's how muscle grows. And I love that because there's no fear from it. There's a desire. And so I think the 30,000 foot view of what has brought me here is just always a North Star of what will help and what's going to be valuable to someone, not give them what I think is valuable. And that's kind of what happened here. So yeah, it's been a fun ride so far.
What's interesting, what you described to me is kind of what you see in most folks in public safety. They have this desire to serve and to be part of a mission that's bigger than yourself, which you've done. So
That's
I think
right.
it uniquely qualifies you to be in the same room and have the same mindset as the folks that you're helping treat. And I think trust is a big issue for us.
100%.
It's easy for us to identify with people who have similar values and opinions as we do when it comes to serving people, to doing something bigger than yourself. So it's really cool that you identified that and then we're able to apply that to something that is helping so many people. When you look at, you talked about passion, you said that word quite a few times. And when we grew up, Bryan and I, and I'm sure you too, aviation was huge. Naval aviation was huge because of Top Gun and just the social culture of our youth. So the fact that you could, kind of wrap all these things into one mission set that you're currently involved with is really cool. I can see behind you, you've got Scott Dorkin's book behind you, which, we talked offline about, knowing Scott and man, he's been a really cool asset to the Navy and promoting what they're doing there. And you've got another naval book. So you can see the passion, and you talk about it. But I think, again, you find that in public safety aviation in general. Everyone's really passionate about the industry itself. know, Bryan, for you growing up, that passion was very evident in your passion to get into the industry. You want to touch on that a little bit?
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on it just briefly, but there was never a time that I didn't want to be a pilot. There's pictures of me as a toddler. All my toys were aviation related. My room growing up looked like the gift shop at the Smithsonian just puked into a teenager's bedroom. And that was it. But, you know, like you said, there was that other side of it where saw things going on in the world and people needing help. You're like, somebody should do something about that. I can do something about that. I think quite a few of us in law enforcement aviation, especially growing up in the Top Gun and Iron Eagle era of all that, everybody wanted to be a fighter pilot. Not everybody could for one reason or another. You know, I had glasses, and there's a million other reasons why people couldn't go in. But then you start asking what other means could we couple this aviation and that desire to serve the community? And the public safety aviation is just a natural fall in for that.
Yeah, I'm so thankful to have been a part of the community and you know, continue to be a part of the community, just in a slightly different way. You brought up Iron Eagle, and did you just see that I can't remember the guy's name in the yeah, he passed. I was so sad to see that.
He passed away. Me too. I had always heard he was based on a real character, Robin Olds' second in command, and I think they actually called him Chappie, but it was such a great character.
That movie wasn't as good as obviously as Top Gun, but it was still very influential. You know, I remember, wasn't it he puts a tape cassette in his, I think it was a Walkman, in flight, and plays that, and like that's his inspiration for the flight.
and just when you thought I couldn't be more nerdy, I'll tell you and the world this, because somebody else did it too. When I was a teenager, and I think a big draw for Iron Eagle was that idea. It was a teenager who made it as a fighter pilot, and you'd have that thought in your head like, oh, I could probably do that too. I could do that too. So I had all these flight simulators on my home computer, and I would spend winter months flying flight simulators, and I had that tape player, and I affixed a Velcro strap to it so I could put it on my leg, just like the kid from Iron Eagle, and play either the Iron Eagle or Top Gun soundtrack over and over and over and over again on that while cool. I played flight simulators. So
that's funny. It's funny how those things really play into your life and your motivation to do things, right?
Yeah.
So,
anyways, that's great. Love that.
I love these stories of, you know, what motivated people to start down this path.
The Top Gun one is pretty funny because I was living in Germany with on the army base at the time, and there was a carnival that would come on base for the kids, right? And there was a roller coaster kind of teapot ride, and they played "Take My Breath Away" over and over and over, and you could hear it all over the base. So like for a week, it was like we were getting indoctrinated with "Take My Breath Away" and Top Gun, and I still love it to this day. I think, you know, so you're the one. Okay.
Yeah, that soundtrack is epic.
It's pretty epic.
Remember, it was at AppsCon one year when the first trailer for the new Top Gun movie came out. And they had the music, that music at the very beginning of the first one when they're on the aircraft carrier getting ready to take off, and someone was playing it on their phone. And there was 4 or 5 people huddled around that phone, but the music was loud enough that everybody could hear just those first few notes
Oh,
of
you
that.
know
Who it
when you
was.
hear them.
And
Yeah.
the room stopped, and everybody and everybody turned to look at the phone to see what it was. People of all ages, but they're all into aviation there. And it was like time just stopped as those first few notes came out. And then you saw it throughout the week as people would pull it up. You'd see these huddles of people around
Oh, I
a
love
phone
it.
looking at that trailer, and all you'd hear is that music in the distance.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. My story about Top Gun 2 is I was working at NAS Whidbey, and we had a meeting one morning for the clinic. And the clinic was right across from the Naval Gateway Inn and Officers Club. So I go walking over and I look around, no one's in there. And some guy with 6 walkie-talkies around his belt comes traipsing out. And he's like, "Hey, how are you?" Wink, wink. And he says, and I was like, "Well, I'm looking for my meeting." And he goes, "No meeting here. We're filming Top Gun 2. And I thought, yeah, I almost laughed, I went, yeah, right. And then a few days later, sure enough, the semis come rolling in, the parking lot's full. We walk by the lunch grill, which was outside the Officers Club. And a friend of mine, Lieutenant Kelly Randall, said, "Oh, look at that. They do have steak and lobster." And you can hear him. He went, "Steak or lobster, steak or lobster." And then, of course, I say, "Hey, who is Tom Cruise's physical therapist?" And they go, "That guy over there." And I said, "Well, how are you?" And he says, "Oh man, Tom really gets sore after one flight." And I thought, uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then he said, "Do you want to see this semi trailer, Tom's gym, basically?" And I was sure. So I got a tour of the gym, which is his workout place, and
Wow.
he is dedicated, if nothing else. That there's a reason he looks 50 at 60, And so the physical therapist was from the Royal Air Force. He used to work with the Royal Air Force, and he got drafted by Tom Cruise when they were doing some Mission Impossible movies in England. And then he said, "Well, man, it's hard to keep Tom up and running because these are pretty involved movies. And how many PTs do you have for your base?" And he said, 3. and we had, we're 10 to 12,000 active duty. And so it hit home what resources some people have, and then what our flight line had that in comparison. So
You bring up a good point. There's many agencies that have zero availability or access to a physical therapist that's available through the city resources outside of getting a referral from the doctor's office. Although the Huntington Beach Police Department, they've got a really cool new program where the city is onboarded a physical therapist. At least this is how I understand it. And it doesn't matter where you work in the city, whether it's aviation or anywhere else. If you have a need to go see a physical therapist, so aviation is of course in there, they have access to that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I think they're trying to treat their employees more like professional athletes, and the end goal is to increase the duration of someone's career. And it's a benefit both the employee and the city who's paying to train these people and keep them in those seats. As you look at recruitment and retention, and those are both issues.
100%. And the barrier, it seems, when you have access, what I've seen is when you have access like that, the idea is perfect. It's what it should be. However, what needs to also be vetted is that you don't have someone doing just conditioning and CrossFit and beat the person up and make you run faster, stronger, harder, because even athletes get injured. And what you do to treat pain or injury is different than what you do to build a quad muscle. Every NFL team is required to have a physical therapist. But I would offer that therapist needs to be familiar with spine health and not treating the spine like an arm or an ankle or a hip or a quadricep. It's very different body mechanics. And so I would just offer the listeners and those who are in decision-making positions to, when you go to have a physical therapist join the team or the agency to do that care, they don't need to have that skill set right away. They can have a lot of passion, but then learning spine from organizations like NIOP, North American Institute of Orthopedic Manual Therapy, where they teach that, which is different than what a new grad would know. That is where you're going to have the magic. You're going to have someone that can really handle the conditioning and the strength, and not just a certified strength and conditioning coach, but someone who can get a neck and back pain or neck and back concern better and get you back in the seat in a day or two. And so that I would just send that out to the listeners of that's more of a PT perspective on those programs. And when you put them together, it's a win-win. You just can't lose. So good for them. That's really great to hear.
I was just wondering, are there certain organizations or certifications that we should look to either for an organization or ourselves when we're searching for a doctor specifically for neck and spine to know that they've received some sort of training or some sort of a accreditation or something like that?
Thanks to our sponsor, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
It's a great question. In the American physical therapy world, we have 21 different specialties. So when we go to our Congress and do our governance work, and there's 21 different avenues of I know what I'm doing and I'm a skilled provider. Spine isn't orthopedics. And so I would offer I'm trained in North American Institute of Orthopedic Manual Therapy, NIOPT, NAIOMT. And you can look them up online, and they have a list of physical therapists that have done training with them in your area. Initials would be COMT, Certified Orthopedic Manual Therapist. The DPT and even the OCS, which is our board certified specialist in orthopedic physical therapy, that is not spine. And I'll get a lot of pushback from that, I'm sure. But I took that exam and I don't use what I learned on that exam to treat. I use what I learned from NIOPT and my 900 hours of continuing coursework. And my mentor was NIOPT. And the people when you're in pain like this and you want someone to nail it, that's who I send them to. You can also look up an acronym that would say FAAOMT, Fellow of the Academy of Orthopedic Manual Therapy. These are all postgraduate certifications that I would say would be more what people would expect for an MD who has gone through residency or specialization. So for our spine folks out there, that's what I would recommend. I had a lot of comments at NAS Would-Be from our flight surgeons saying that they refer people to physical therapy often, and it's this black box of physical therapy. I send them and I don't know what I'm supposed to get when they return, is what I would hear from our flight surgeons. And it's very hard for one PT to tell another PT how they should practice. That just doesn't sit well unless people are asking. The average person can look up NIOPT providers in their neck of the woods. They can also shoot me an email on smartbacx.com and I could answer that if they were looking for someone. We helped a special forces guy. He reached out and we did a consult, and he really needed a vestibular neuro-based physical therapist because he had had some cervicogenic dizziness, but he needed someone that could see him in person in Virginia. But that was a time when I could act as a specialist liaison and get him to the right person, where now he's going to get trained and not think, I have a tumor. This will always be the case. No, the eyes, the ears, and the neck, if they've been through a lot of whiplash and injuries and, self-defense, jujitsu, car bombs, blasts, any of that chronically turned with high G forces at your neck, the ligaments get pretty lax in the spine. It's a real fine line to say only these PTs, because like myself, I didn't sit for the COMT exam through NIOPT. I took the OCS because that's what the Navy recognized. And they wanted everybody to be board certified, because that is what American Physical Therapy Association says is the board certification. I don't use that to do my spine. So I would suggest that if you see board certified, they may just really like focusing on ankles and knees and hips. And that's kind of a internal issue that we have that I would speak to. So that would be my first thought on that.
Bryan, you were on the same page as me when it came to that question, because I was thinking the exact same thing. You think about, from our point of view, most city, county, government agencies are going to assign you physical therapy through the doctor's office that you go to. And that's a pretty generalized appointment that you make. You don't have a whole lot of control initially over who you go see, but down the road, at least in the state of California, after I think it's 30 days of treatment with your workers' comp doctor, you can get different treatment through a specialized PT or physician.
Oh, that's nice.
So for folks that can kind of look for that, one, is that something that your company can offer as far as treatment with workers' comp type cases through?
No, I don't do workers' comp. The insurance environment is not conducive to the services I want to provide right now. I want to be accessible. I want to be clean. So I help with self-management and wellness and kind of that spine health aspect. I can get you to someone or suggest someone in your area and act as that conduit to someone who would probably speak the spine language a little better. And that's something a lot of people have reached out on LinkedIn and on email. The phone a friend, hey, do you know someone? And I have a pretty nice network of physical therapists around the nation who, they're familiar with this stuff. And so it's just our specialty. It's not that all PT is bad. I would never, ever say that. I love my profession. I love our people. It's specialized. And I don't think the average consumer knows that that's even the case, So
it's exactly. And even outside of workman's comp, I'm sure, John, you went through it as well. But when I first started going in for my neck and my shoulders, I don't know. I do you sign on to your insurance, you look for, a search bar, and whoever's closest to your house, are they accepting new patients? You go there, they have to send you the PT before they even think about anything else. I've never had to deal with this before. So they send you to a PT place, and you're like, well, the doctor must know what he's doing. You walk in there. I'm in Florida. I walked into a PT place and it looked like lunch hour at the old folks home. I was like, oh my God, I'm 30 years younger than the next youngest person here. I look like I should be working here. And they were set up to deal with that clientele, dealing with the issues that they're facing at that point in their life, which was not what I needed. I went for about 3 weeks and I was like, this is a complete waste of time. And I was like, I don't have time to do this anymore. I don't have money for the copay. It's not doing anything. So I just stopped. I'm like, all right, I'll just keep sucking it up. And then I kept sucking it up until one day I went to look from left to right too quick. And I let out a yelp like a little dog got kicked. And I went,
yeah.
uh-oh, I might need to go back. And what could I have done in that 6 months that I didn't do because of the experience I had, where I don't know what questions to ask?
No, that's a great, I'll answer two of those things. But in reverse. So what you could have done in those 6 months is what I teach with the Smart BacX consults. Oh, you're doing that? Well, here are the things that you would do at the gym, not do. Here's how you self-manage it. And It depends on the degree of severity. If the disc is blown, we're not going to make that. We'll mitigate pain, but if it's a surgery, it's a surgery. However, at the same time, what you mentioned is what I hear all the time. I walk into a place and they make me sit in a chair and they bend my neck and tell me to do these stretches. They walk away. Someone else does it for me. A tech comes over and makes me do these, and I'm paying a $30 copay each time. And it's a not one-on-one scenario. I'm not leaving better. I leave equal to when I walked in. And so what a good spine session, no matter who's doing it, would look like is a physical therapist, not a tech or a physical therapist assistant for your spine. Other things that may be suitable, but we're talking about neck and back specific. They're not having you stretch and pull your arm and your neck and or your leg or your back. That will always make the nerve worse. We can get into that research later, but to not unpack it here, unless we do it later, the nerve gets weaker when it's held in the nerve shuts off, like it's been put under anesthesia for surgery when you pull on it, whether it's the hamstring or the arm or the neck. It doesn't like it. When you come out of that, Tom Heimberg's research and all of his cohorts out of Denmark for the last 2 decades have shown the nerve cannot generate what's called an action potential, or the power that propagates down the nerve to land on the muscle to make it work. So now you're weaker for about 40 minutes. Okay, so what? Maybe that makes me feel better. Everything shuts off. I feel better. The nerve comes back more mad. A disc is actually a ligament between 2 bones. It is to check rotation in the spine. It is the last thing that picks up the fact that you got twisted before it herniates or blows or what have you. Once the ligaments are wonky, now we're irritating the disc. And so we don't want to be twisting and pulling that stuff. It houses the skull and spine, house the brain and spinal cord. Those are not the movers of the body. The arms and legs are. So when you watch an Olympic runner run, their core is so strong that their arms and legs can whip fast through the atmosphere of air and propel them. If their trunk moved from side to side and their spine was moving, they would be getting injured and looking very like they were having a seizure if they moved that fast. It's a core and stability before mobility principle. And so that is what your PT should also look like. I don't hurt when I do these things. It feels like work, not pain. My symptoms decrease, even if for a day, and we'll get into that later. And I leave better than when I walked in. And it's not a bunch of modalities. It's not a lot of heat and ice. It's not a lot of ultrasound. It's not a traction table. Traction's bad too. Don't do it. It's stretching, but almost worse. So I would suggest that if that is not happening after 1 or 2 visits, I would start looking around.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It goes back to what SR3 talks about. You don't know what you don't know. And you walk into these offices and we don't have, again, like you said, Bryan, we've never done this before. We're just kind of
that's right.
We're being told to go to a certain place and do a certain thing. And we'll do it. And like you said, you go to a couple sessions, like this isn't helping. In fact, I might feel a little worse at times.
And if there's anything I've learned too, military and any kind of service provider is polite and kind and respects orders. So if you're told to go to PT, they all go and they do it dutifully, and then the PT, oh, do you feel better? And they don't want to be mean, and they say, yes, I do.
Yeah.
And that's not
You're
the
right.
case. And so it's been, I think the best compliment I received is up at Whidbey, where they said, you're in the circle of trust. We know that if we come to you, you have something that will help, and that you don't go running to the flight surgeon. And I said, I don't have to, because I know you're going to get better. I never downed anyone in my entire career, because they either had downed themselves or we got them better, one or the other.
Yeah, I did shout out to my physical therapist, Liz Cavasso. She was amazing, and the work she did with me was super therapeutic and helped a ton.
Oh, good.
Didn't help avert a surgery, but that's beyond her
That's
control.
okay.
And,
yeah, that's right. That's right.
I just am thankful for all the work that she did, and the work that you're doing is amazing. Going back to your, you talked about growing up and being a part of the military, your family being a part of the military, you moved everywhere. Can you talk about the decision to pursue this as a career and how you ended up working with the Navy and what that's looked like?
This is the end of part 1 of our conversation with Dr. Ryan. Don't forget to join us for part 2 of this important conversation. Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking. Thanks to our sponsor, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions. Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you for supporting the sponsors who make important conversations like these possible. I'm thankful for the wisdom and advice of Dr. Ryan. I wish I'd known about her practice long ago. I briefly mentioned this in the podcast, but I've undergone 2 neck surgeries that ultimately ended up ending my career prematurely. I was fortunate to have Dr. Robert Watkins IV, who's the director of the Marina Spine Center and past chief of staff of Cedars-Sinai Marina Del Rey, and current spine surgeon for the LA Dodgers, Rams, Lakers, Clippers, and Kings. If you end up needing spinal surgery, find someone like Dr. Robert Watkins. Many workplace medical centers will just refer you to their nearest spinal center for treatment and spinal surgery. I learned the hard way you have to be your own advocate and fight for the best treatment possible. If you're in a position where spinal surgery is required, I highly recommend you reach out to Dr. Robert Watkins at the Marina Spine Center, which is located in Los Angeles' seaside community of Marina Del Rey, just up the way from LAX. This isn't a paid advertisement, just personal advice. Cheers.
Time to close up the Hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.